12 of the deadliest creatures in the galaxy just broke out of their cells. Security systems failed, armed guards fled, battle-hardened soldiers refused to go near them, and the only person who could stop them, a 22-year-old human intern named Emma Rodriguez on her third day of work. She didn't use weapons. She didn't call for backup. She walked into that containment zone with nothing but a clipboard and a smile. And 30 minutes later, those apex predators were purring like kittens. But here's what nobody expected. This wasn't just about one brave intern. It was about a secret that every alien species in the galaxy had been trying to hide. A truth so shocking that when it finally came out, it rewrote the rules of intergalactic diplomacy forever. In the next few minutes, I'll reveal how Emma turned the most feared hunters in known space into gentle pets. You'll discover why alien scientists were terrified when humans first applied to work at the Galactic Wildlife Preserve. And I'll show you the one biological advantage humans have that makes us the most dangerous species in the universe. Not because we're strong, not because we're smart, but because of something we do without even thinking about it. This story started as a routine containment breach. It ended with 12 governments demanding Earth be quarantined. Let me show you exactly how this happened. The Galactic Wildlife Preserve sits on Station Kepler 442. It's a massive research facility where alien scientists study dangerous creatures from across 40 systems. Think of it as a zoo, a laboratory, and a maximum security prison all rolled into one. The preserve holds over 300 species. Most are harmless, but 12 of them are classified as apex predators. These aren't your Earth lions or bears. These are creatures that evolved on death worlds. Planets where gravity crushes bones, where the air itself can burn your lungs, where everything wants to kill everything else. The Vrexian slasher has claws that cut through titanium like paper. The Korath stalker can sense fear from 3 miles away and hunts anything that runs. The Zentari serpent produces venom so toxic that 1 drop can kill 1,000 beings. These creatures had never been touched by intelligent life. They'd never been trained. They barely tolerated being fed. Emma Rodriguez arrived at the preserve in late 2847. She was fresh out of xenobiology school, eager, nervous, completely unprepared for what she'd find. The preserve director, a 4-armed Quillarian named Vex Thor, almost rejected her application. Humans were new to the galactic community, only 70 years since first contact. Most aliens still didn't trust them, but the preserve was short-staffed. They needed someone to handle basic tasks, filing reports, checking inventory. Stay away from the dangerous exhibits, Vexithor told her. Just do your paperwork and go home. Emma nodded and agreed. She had no intention of causing trouble. But on her 3rd day, something went catastrophically wrong. A solar flare hit the station, nothing major, but enough to scramble the electrical systems for 90 seconds. That's all it took. The containment fields dropped. 12 apex predators walked out of their cells into the main research corridor. Alarms screamed. Vexithor hit the emergency lockdown. Security drones deployed. Armed guards in powered armor rushed to the scene. They arrived to find the creatures spreading through 3 corridors, slashing at walls, testing doors, looking for exits or prey. The head of security, a veteran soldier named Croth, took one look at the situation and made a decision. Evacuate the sector. Seal it off. Pump in sedative gas and hope the creatures fall asleep before they tear through the walls. But there was a problem. Emma was still inside. She'd been restocking supplies in a storage room when the breach happened. Now she was trapped behind the predators with no way out. Now here's where things get really interesting. Emma heard the alarms. She heard the guards shouting. She knew something bad was happening. But when she opened the storage room door and saw the creatures, she didn't scream. She didn't run. She stood completely still and watched them. The Vrexian slasher was closest. 8 feet tall, covered in black scales, eyes like molten gold. Its claws scraped the metal floor with every step. This thing had killed 17 researchers on its home planet before they managed to capture it. It could rip through security doors. It had once bitten through a containment drone made of military-grade alloys. Emma looked at it. Really looked. And she saw something nobody else had noticed. The slasher was scared. Its eyes darted around. Its breathing was fast. Its claws weren't scraping the floor to intimidate. It was testing the ground, making sure it was solid. This creature was in a completely alien environment. Bright lights, strange smells, loud noises. It wasn't hunting. It was confused and defensive. Emma did something insane. She sat down on the floor, just dropped into a cross-legged position right there in the corridor, made herself small, non-threatening. Then she started talking. Not to the slasher, just talking. Quiet, calm. About nothing important. The weather back on Earth. Her favorite foods. What she'd studied in school. The slasher stopped moving, its head tilted. Why wasn't this small creature running? On the security feed, Vex Thor watched in horror. "What is she doing?" he whispered. Krath was already suiting up. "I'm going in. We can still save her." But before Krath could move, something impossible happened. The slasher took 3 steps toward Emma, lowered its massive head, and sniffed her hair. Emma didn't flinch. She kept talking. Slowly, carefully, she raised one hand. Palm out, fingers relaxed. She didn't reach for the creature, just held her hand there, letting the slasher decide. 10 seconds passed. 20. Then the slasher pressed its snout against her palm. Emma gently scratched behind what looked like its ear. The creature made a sound nobody had ever heard before, a low rumbling purr that vibrated through the floor. Krath froze halfway to the airlock. "That's not possible." It got better. The Korath stalker, drawn by the commotion, came around the corner. This thing was worse than the slasher. It hunted in packs on its home world. It had killed 2 handlers during transport. Its entire biology was designed to detect and exploit fear. Emma looked up at it, smiled. "Hey there, big guy. You want some attention too?" The stalker's sensor organs went crazy. It was reading Emma's biochemistry, her hormone levels, her neural activity, looking for fear, for stress, for any sign of prey behavior. It found nothing. Emma wasn't pretending to be calm. She was calm, genuinely, completely relaxed. The stalker sat down. Right there in the corridor, like a dog waiting for permission to approach. Emma laughed and patted the floor next to her. The stalker crawled forward and laid its head in her lap. Within 15 minutes, all 12 apex predators had gathered around Emma. The Zentari serpent coiled near her feet. The Thoraxian crusher let her scratch its armored back. The Shadow Reaver, a creature that lived in pure darkness and attacked anything with a heat signature, was rubbing against her like an oversized cat. The security team stood outside the sealed sector, weapons ready, completely useless. They were watching a human intern give belly rubs to creatures that could level small buildings. Vexithor's hands were shaking. This violates every principle of xenobiology we know. But if you think that's crazy, wait until you hear this. The incident made it into the news within hours. Human intern survives apex predator containment breach. Across the galaxy, scientists demanded to know how. What technique did she use? What technology? What drug or pheromone or mental ability? The answer was worse than they feared. Emma hadn't used anything special. She'd just done what humans do naturally. She'd treated dangerous animals like potential friends. See, there's something unique about humans that other species never evolved. We domesticate things, not just dogs and cats and horses. We see a wild animal and think, could I make that my friend? Ancient humans looked at wolves, giant predators with fangs and pack-hunting instincts. And we didn't just hunt them or avoid them, we fed them, brought them into our camps, turned them into partners. We did the same with wild cats, with birds, with animals that should have seen us as either prey or competition. No other species does this. The Quilarians study animals. The Vrexians hunt them. The Karathi worship them from a distance. But humans, we try to pet them. Emma grew up on a farm in Colorado. She'd raised chickens, goats, and 3 rescue dogs. One of those dogs was a wolf hybrid that everyone said was too dangerous to keep. Emma trained it in 6 months, not through force, through patience and understanding. When she saw those apex predators, her brain didn't register them as threats. It registered them as animals that might need help. Scared, confused, acting out because they felt cornered. Every instinct she developed on Earth kicked in. Stay calm. Show them you're not a threat. Let them come to you. But here's the real secret. It's not just about staying calm. It's about what happens in human biochemistry when we interact with animals. When Emma petted that slasher, her brain released oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the same chemical that floods a mother's brain when she holds her baby. And here's the shocking part. That oxytocin affects more than just humans. It works on other species too. When Emma touched the slasher, the creature's own neural chemistry responded. Its stress hormones dropped. Its defensive instincts quieted. For the first time since its capture, it felt safe. Other species can't do this. The Quilarians are too logical. They approach animals with scientific detachment. The Vrexians are too aggressive. Even when they try to be gentle, their body language screams predator. But humans have spent 10,000 years learning how to communicate across species barriers. We've evolved to read animal emotions and project calmness. The preserve scientists started testing this immediately. They brought in other researchers, tried to replicate Emma's success. A Quilarian biologist named Trecheval approached the slasher with treats and soothing words. The slasher hissed and backed into a corner. A Korath handler tried next. The stalker growled and showed its teeth. Then Emma walked in. No special preparation. No treats. Just her normal self. Every single predator immediately relaxed. The slasher trotted over for head scratches. The stalker did that weird sitting thing it only did for her. The serpent coiled protectively around her feet. Vexthor pulled up the biochemical scans. This is unprecedented. Her presence alone is altering their neural states. They're treating her like a trusted pack member. More shocking discoveries followed. Emma could predict the creature's behavior with scary accuracy. When the Thoraxian crusher started pacing its cell, other handlers thought it was agitated. Emma said it was bored and wanted enrichment. She threw in some puzzle toys. The crusher calmed down immediately. When the Shadow Reaver refused to eat for 3 days, the veterinary team worried it was sick. Emma watched it for 10 minutes and said it didn't like the feeding schedule. They were feeding it at solar noon. A creature from a dark world naturally hunted at night. They switched feeding to station nighttime. The Reaver ate everything. The other species working at the preserve started to realize something terrifying. Humans weren't just good with animals. They were naturally equipped to bond with any creature, no matter how alien or dangerous. It was like every human carried an invisible off switch for predator aggression. Governments took notice. If humans could calm apex predators this easily, what did that mean for galactic security? Could a human walk into a Vrexian war beast training facility and turn their battle creatures into pets? Could human diplomats use this ability to manipulate negotiations? The Galactic Council called an emergency session. 12 ambassadors from 12 species, all demanding the same thing. Humans needed to be restricted, monitored, possibly quarantined until they understood the full extent of this ability. Earth's ambassador, a calm woman named Victoria Okonkwo, listened to the accusations. Then she smiled and said 4 words that changed everything. Have you met our children? This brings us to the most shocking discovery of all. The council didn't understand what Victoria meant at first. Then she showed them videos from Earth. Human children, regular kids, playing with dogs twice their size, hugging cats that barely tolerated adults, feeding chickens, riding horses, laughing with animals that should have been dangerous. But that wasn't the shocking part. Victoria showed them footage from human history, Stone Age paintings, humans living alongside wolves, Bronze Age tablets describing the first domesticated cats, medieval manuscripts showing falconry, modern videos of wildlife rehabilitators hand-raising orphaned bears, lions, tigers. "This isn't a weapon," Victoria said quietly. "This is who we are. We've been doing this for over 20,000 years. Every human child grows up learning to read animal emotions, to bond with creatures different from ourselves. It's in our culture, our instincts, our evolution." The council chamber went silent. Then a Zentari diplomat named Sithrax spoke. His voice was shaking. "Do you understand what you're telling us? That every human has this ability, that there are 8 billion of you?" Victoria nodded. "Give or take." The implications hit like a shockwave. Humanity wasn't a new species learning to fit into galactic society. They were a species of natural animal tamers, pack bonders, cross-species communicators, and nobody had realized it because humans thought this was normal. Back at the preserve, Emma's supervisor started asking uncomfortable questions. How many animals could one human bond with? Was there a limit? Could the bond be broken? Emma didn't know. She'd bonded with 12 apex predators without trying. She visited them daily, brought enrichment, played games. The creatures looked forward to her shifts. The slasher would press against its enclosure window when it heard her voice. The stalker memorized her schedule and waited by the door. Then they tried something experimental. They brought in a creature that had never seen Emma before. A ravager from the Kethril system. This thing was so dangerous they kept it in a separate wing. It had killed 3 handlers, refused all interaction. The plan was to euthanize it next week because nobody could safely work with it. Emma volunteered to try. Vex Thor almost said no. But curiosity won. They set up every safety protocol, emergency barriers, stun weapons, medics on standby. Emma walked into the Ravager's habitat with nothing but a bag of treats and her usual calm demeanor. The Ravager was huge, 12 feet of muscle and rage. It saw Emma and charged immediately. Everyone watching the feed thought they were about to witness a death. Emma didn't run. She dropped the treats, sat down, and waited. The Ravager stopped 3 feet away. Confused. Why wasn't the prey running? Emma started talking. Same quiet voice she used with the others. She wasn't even looking at the Ravager directly. Just sitting there. Relaxed. 5 minutes passed. 10. The Ravager circled her twice. Sniffed. Her. Made threatening sounds. Emma ignored all of it. Just kept talking about her day. How the coffee machine was broken again. How she needed to call her mom this weekend. At minute 15, the Ravager laid down. Just collapsed onto its belly like a tired dog. Emma waited another 5 minutes. Then she slowly reached over and touched its head. The Ravager's eyes closed. That same rumbling purr filled the habitat. The head veterinarian, a clinical Quillarian named Dexmer, pulled up the scans in disbelief. Its cortisol levels just dropped by 60%. Its aggression markers are at baseline. This creature was scheduled for termination, and she just made it docile in 15 minutes. But the scariest part came when they reviewed all the footage. Every interaction Emma had with the predators, every moment she spent in their enclosures. They found something that made the entire council go pale. The predators were learning from her, not just to be calm, they were learning empathy. The slasher started being gentler with the automated feeding systems. The stalker stopped trying to intimidate other handlers. The Ravager began showing interest in puzzle toys and enrichment activities. Emma wasn't just taming them, she was socializing them, teaching them that not everything was a threat, that interaction could be positive, that trust was possible. A Korath psychologist named Drethnak put it bluntly. This human is reprogramming apex predator behavior through nothing but positive interaction. If this scales, if all humans can do this, then every military animal in the galaxy is potentially compromised. Every guard creature, every hunting beast, one human could walk through them all. The Galactic Security Council demanded answers. Could humans be trained not to do this? Was it possible to suppress the ability? Earth's scientists ran tests, brain scans, psychological profiles, genetic analysis. The answer came back definitive. No, this wasn't a learned skill. It was hardwired into human neurology. The oxytocin response, the instinct to nurture, the ability to read micro-expressions across species. It was part of being human. You couldn't turn it off without fundamentally changing what humanity was. Panic spread through military circles. The Vrexian war fleets used trained predators for boarding actions. Could a human crew member compromise those beasts? The Thoraxian Defense Force bred guard animals for critical installations. Would they roll over for belly rubs if a human walked by? Some species called for humans to be banned from military service. Others wanted them restricted to Earth. A few extreme voices demanded humanity be designated a Class 3 biohazard, too dangerous to integrate. Then something unexpected happened. A small mining colony on the Outer Rim sent a message to the Council. They had a problem. A nest of Krell hunters had moved into their mining tunnels. These things were armored, aggressive, and multiplying fast. The colony was about to be evacuated. Total economic loss. They were requesting a human handler, just one, to try Emma's approach. Earth sent a volunteer, a former zookeeper named David O'Brien. He arrived with no weapons, no special gear, just experience and the same calm Emma had shown. 3 weeks later, the Krell hunters were living peacefully in a designated zone. They'd stopped attacking miners, started accepting food deliveries, even helped clear out a tunnel collapse in exchange for extra treats. The colony stayed operational. David was offered a permanent position. Similar requests started flooding in from across the galaxy. Humans weren't threats. They were the solution to problems other species couldn't solve. So what does all this mean for us today? Emma's story changed humanity's role in the galaxy overnight. Within 6 months, over 200 humans were working as animal handlers across 40 systems. Within a year, it became the fastest-growing profession for human workers off-world. But the implications went deeper than just jobs. See, once other species understood what humans could do, they started asking bigger questions. If humans could bond with animals this easily, what else could they bond with? Diplomatic relations shifted. Species that had been cold toward humans suddenly wanted human mediators. Turns out, our ability to read emotions and build trust across species barriers made us natural negotiators. We could sit in a room with 6 different alien races and somehow make everyone feel heard. Trade agreements changed. Human workers became valuable assets in mixed species operations. Not because we were smarter or stronger, but because we could build team cohesion between groups that normally didn't get along. A human manager could look at a Vrexian and a Quillarian having a territorial dispute and somehow get them working together in an hour. Military doctrine had to be rewritten. Turns out the species that worried about humans compromising their war beasts had it backwards. Humans became the most sought-after military trainers. We could take a barely controlled battle creature and turn it into a disciplined asset. Guard animals trained by humans were more reliable, more stable, and less likely to turn on their handlers. Emma herself became a symbol. She never wanted fame, just wanted to work with animals. But her story inspired thousands of young humans to pursue xenobiology. Applications to off-world programs increased by 300%. Earth's universities added new programs focusing on cross-species communication and bonding. The preserve on Station Kepler 442 expanded. They built a new wing specifically for human-led rehabilitation programs. Creatures deemed too dangerous for study were given to human handlers first. Success rate? Over 90%. Animals that would have been destroyed were instead socialized and sometimes even returned to protected habitats. But not everyone was happy. Some alien species felt threatened. The Vrexian military tried to ban humans from their war beast training programs. Lasted 3 months. Their animals were stressed, unpredictable, and had a high injury rate. They quietly asked for human trainers back and pretended the ban never happened. The Thoraxian government initially refused human workers at their security installations. Then one of their guard creature breeding facilities had a contamination scare. The animals panicked, started killing each other. Their handlers couldn't calm them down. In desperation, they called in a human named Lisa Park. She walked into that facility alone and had every creature calm within an hour. The Thoraxians changed their policy the next day. Some humans struggled with the responsibility. Not everyone had Emma's natural talent. Some tried to force bonds that weren't working. A few incidents happened. A handler named Thomas Wright ignored warning signs with a Krell hunter and got injured. He recovered, but it became a training example. Human abilities weren't magic. They required patience, understanding, and respect. Earth developed certification programs. You couldn't just show up and claim to be an animal handler. You needed training, psychological evaluation, supervised experience. The standards were strict because one bad incident could damage humanity's reputation across the galaxy. The economic impact was massive. Human expertise became an export. Species paid premium prices for human trainers, handlers, and behavioral specialists. Money flowed back to Earth, funded education, infrastructure, research programs. Humans went from being new members of the galactic community to essential partners in less than a decade. But the biggest change was philosophical. For thousands of years, galactic species had maintained strict boundaries between themselves and other life forms. Predator, prey, domestic, wild. Everything had its place. Everything stayed in its category. Humans showed them a different way. We didn't see rigid categories. We saw potential relationships. We looked at a dangerous predator and thought, maybe it's just scared. We approached the unknown with curiosity instead of fear. We believed that almost anything could become a friend if you gave it time and patience. Some species found this terrifying. The idea that boundaries were fluid, that a creature's nature could change through relationship. It challenged their entire worldview. A Zentari philosopher named Kesavara wrote a famous essay called The Human Paradox. She argued that humans were simultaneously the galaxy's greatest peacemakers and its most dangerous revolutionary. Because we didn't just change our own behavior, we changed the behavior of everything around us. Other species embraced it. The Quillarians started studying human psychology intensively. They wanted to understand how we did it. Could they learn? Could their children be taught these skills? Early results showed some promise. A young Quillarian named Vexnil spent 6 months training with human mentors. He managed to bond with a small predator. Nothing like Emma's success, but progress. The real question became, what's next? If humans could bond with animals this easily, what about artificial intelligence? What about synthetic life forms? What about species we hadn't met yet? Some scientists worried we were too good at building connections, that we'd empathize with things we shouldn't, that we'd see humanity in places where it didn't exist, that our instinct to nurture and befriend could be exploited by hostile actors. Others argued the opposite. That humanity's bonding ability was exactly what the galaxy needed. That centuries of species staying separate, maintaining their boundaries, keeping their distance had created a cold, fragmented civilization. Humans were bringing warmth, community, connection. Before we wrap up, there's one final thing you need to know. 2 years after the original incident, Emma was still working at the preserve. She'd been promoted 3 times. Now she ran the entire Apex Predator Rehabilitation Program. She had a team of 40 researchers. 20 of them were human. 20 were aliens learning human methods. One afternoon, Vex Thor called her into his office. He looked nervous. In the 2 years Emma had known him, she'd never seen him nervous. "We received a request," he said quietly, "from the Galactic Council. They want you to attempt something unprecedented." He pulled up a hologram. A creature unlike anything Emma had seen. Massive, crystalline, constantly shifting. "This is a void sage," Vex Thor explained. "It comes from a dimension adjacent to ours. It's not exactly alive in the way we understand. It's not entirely conscious. It exists in a state we can barely measure." Emma stared at it. "What's the problem?" 7 of them appeared near the Kelran system last month. They're not hostile, but they're not responsive either. They drift through space. Occasionally they pass through planets. When they do, electromagnetic systems fail, power grids collapse, ships lose control. The Council needs them to move, or respond, or something. They've tried everything. Emma understood. "They want to know if I can communicate with it." Vex Thor's 4 hands twisted together. "Emma, we don't know if these things even perceive reality the way we do. They might not have emotions. They might not have thoughts. This could be completely impossible." Emma smiled. "Remember when you said the same thing about the Ravager?" 3 weeks later, Emma stood in a specially designed chamber on a deep space station. The void sage floated in the center. Up close, it was beautiful. Light refracted through its crystalline structure in patterns that hurt to look at. It hummed at a frequency that made her bones vibrate. Every instinct Emma had said this wasn't a creature, it was a force of nature. Trying to communicate with it was like trying to have a conversation with a storm. But she'd learned to trust her instincts, and somewhere, deep in her gut, she felt something. Not intelligence, not emotion, but presence. She sat down on the chamber floor, did what always worked, made herself small, non-threatening, started talking about Earth, about colors and seasons, about music and laughter, about the feeling of sun on your face. Nothing happened for an hour, 2 hours. The observation team was getting restless. "This is pointless," a Korath scientist muttered. "That thing doesn't even have sensory organs." Then Emma started singing. Nothing fancy, just an old folk song her grandmother taught her. Something about rivers and stars and going home. Her voice was quiet, a little off-key, completely human. The void sage stopped drifting. Its crystalline structure shifted, realigned, and for just a moment it pulsed in time with Emma's singing. The hum changed pitch, harmonized, created something that almost sounded like music. Emma's breath caught. She kept singing, trying different melodies, different rhythms. The void sage responded to each one, sometimes matching her pitch, sometimes creating counter-melodies. It was communicating, not with words, not with thoughts, but with something deeper. Pattern, rhythm, emotion without emotion. When Emma finally stopped singing, the void sage drifted closer. Its crystalline surface brushed against the chamber wall near her. Gentle, curious. She reached out and touched it. Her fingers passed through solid matter and found something warm. Not heat, but warmth like a memory. Like coming home after a long journey. The Galactic Council watched in stunned silence. A Zentari diplomat spoke first. She just made contact with a dimensional entity, something we thought was impossible. She sang to it, and it responded. The implications were staggering. If humans could bond not just with animals, but with beings from other dimensions, with entities that barely qualified as life, with things that existed outside normal reality, then humanity's ability wasn't just cross-species communication. It was something universal, something that transcended biology and even physics. Earth's ambassador, Victoria Okonkwo, addressed the council one final time. "I think we've been asking the wrong question. You've been trying to figure out what humans can bond with, where the limits are, what we can or can't communicate with. But maybe there are no limits. Maybe the question isn't what humans can connect with. Maybe it's what can't connect back." She let that sink in. We spent thousands of years on Earth learning that almost everything has a way to communicate if you're patient enough, if you're willing to listen, if you approach with openness instead of fear. Dogs, cats, horses, dolphins, elephants, even octopuses, even bees. We found ways to understand them all. Now we're in a galaxy with thousands of species, millions of life forms, things from dimensions we can't fully perceive. And you're surprised that we're still doing what we've always done? Looking for connection? Trying to understand? Refusing to accept that anything is truly alien? The council had no response to that. Because Victoria was right. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't intelligence or technology or even empathy. It was persistence. We simply refused to believe that understanding was impossible. We looked at the unknown and saw not a threat, but a puzzle, a challenge, an invitation. Emma left the chamber that day having changed galactic history again. The Void Sages became responsive to human contact. They didn't leave the Kelran system, but they learned to avoid planetary orbits, to dim their electromagnetic effects, to coexist. More importantly, they proved something every species had been afraid to acknowledge: that consciousness and connection were stranger and more flexible than anyone imagined, that the boundaries between self and other, between alive and...
The bald brute had not even had time to fall to the floor when Yan Min was already attacking the next one.